The crash is not just a number on a screen. It is inside the buyer's savings, inside their monthly budget, inside their career, inside their retirement, and inside every plan they built around the assumption that property would be the foundation of their future. Nobody is safe from it. Not the buyer trying to get in, not the buyer who just got in, and not the buyer who has been in for years. Your deposit is disappearing before you move in. The buyer who spent years saving for a deposit is watching it shrink from two directions before they even get the keys. The stamp duty bill that did not exist 12 months ago takes thousands from the deposit before the buyer completes the purchase. That money does not come back. It is not equity. It is not an investment. It is a tax that lands on the deposit and reduces what the buyer has left to put toward the property itself. The buyer borrows more to compensate. The monthly payment rises because of it. The deposit the buyer thought they had is not the deposit they end up using. And then the property falls in value. The equity the buyer expected to start building from day one does not exist. The deposit that took 5 years to save can be erased in a single year of falling prices. The buyer who put down the smallest amount is the buyer who reaches negative equity first. One bad year and the entire deposit exists only on paper. The buyer still owes the full amount on the mortgage. The property is worth less than the debt attached to it. And the buyer who worked for years to get in now has less than nothing to show for it. The buyer who has not yet purchased is watching from the outside as the deposit target moves further away. Prices have not fallen far enough to offset the stamp duty increase and the higher mortgage costs. The buyer who was told to save $20,000 now needs $25,000 to reach the same position. The target moved while they were saving. It is still moving. And even while the deposit is shrinking, the monthly payment is growing. Next, your monthly budget is being consumed. The buyer making mortgage payments today is spending more of their income on housing than buyers have spent in over a decade. The March repricing pushed that figure higher still. The gap between what the buyer pays and what their budget can sustain is not an abstract number. It is the pension contribution that gets skipped every month because there is nothing left after the mortgage. It is the car repair that goes on a credit card because the savings account is empty. It is the childcare cost that has to be borrowed because the mortgage took the money first. It is the holiday that does not happen, the meal out that gets canceled, and the plan that gets postponed. The buyer is not just paying a mortgage. They are paying a mortgage that leaves nothing for anything else. Every pound the payment takes is a pound that does not go to savings, does not go to a pension, does not go to the emergency fund that every financial advisor says the buyer should have. The buyer knows they should have it. They cannot build it because the mortgage payment arrives first and takes everything that was supposed to go toward it. The buyer who entered the market expecting their housing costs to be manageable is finding out that manageable meant manageable at the rate they signed at. The rate they remortgage onto will be higher. The payment will rise. The budget that was already tight will get tighter. And the gap between surviving and building anything beyond the mortgage will get wider. And the buyer trapped in that monthly squeeze cannot leave even if they need to. Next, your career is locked to your postcode. The buyer who cannot sell cannot move. The buyer who cannot move cannot take the job in another city, cannot follow the promotion that requires relocating, and cannot accept the offer that would change the trajectory of their career. The lender will not release them from a property that is worth less than the loan. The market will not produce a buyer willing to pay what is owed. The property sits on the market. The buyer stays where they are. The opportunity passes them by. This is the part of the crash that does not appear in any house price index. The career the buyer did not pursue because the property held them in place. The income they did not earn because they could not move to the city where the work was. The professional growth that did not happen because the mortgage made the buyer immovable. The buyer's career becomes a hostage to the property market. The job they want is in one city. The property they own is in another. The gap between those two facts is the buyer's professional life on hold. The buyer does not talk about this at work. They do not tell the recruiter why they turned the role down. They do not explain to their manager that the reason they are not pursuing the transfer is because their flat is worth less than they owe on it. The crash creates a silence around the buyer's career that nobody outside their household understands. The colleagues who are moving cities, taking promotions, following opportunities are not more talented. They are more mobile. The buyer who is trapped is not less capable. They are less free. Every month they wait for the market to recover is a month the opportunity in the other city gets smaller. The employer hires someone else. The role is filled. The window closes. The buyer stays in the property and stays in the job they were planning to leave. The crash did not just affect the value of the home, it affected the value of the buyer's time. And the years the buyer spends waiting are years they do not get back. Next, your retirement is being pushed out of reach. The buyer entering the market today at the average age on the average mortgage term will make the final payment years past the state pension age. The pension alone will not cover the mortgage payment. The numbers are not even close. The buyer arriving at retirement with the debt still running faces a choice that no previous generation of homeowners had to make. Sell the home they spent decades paying for, or find income in their 70s that the pension was never designed to replace. The pension contributions they skipped in their 30s and 40s to keep up with the mortgage are the pension they will not have when they need it most. Every month the buyer chose the mortgage payment over the pension contribution was a month that compounded against them. The pension they could have built with 30 years of contributions does not exist. In its place is a smaller pot that will not cover the gap between the state pension and the cost of living in retirement. The generation before this one finished paying for their home and had a decade of earning with no housing debt before retirement. That decade was the window to save, to build a cushion, to enter retirement without a monthly payment hanging over them. The generation watching this will not have that window. They will carry the debt into retirement itself. The crash did not just push the buyer further from owning, it pushed their retirement further from being livable. And all of this assumes the property holds its value. If it does not, the buyer arrives at retirement owing money on something worth less than the debt. Next, your money is trapped where it cannot grow. Every month, paying a mortgage on a property that is falling in value or sitting in a frozen market is a month that money could have been building equity somewhere the market works. The buyer in a falling market is paying more every month for something that is worth less every month. The buyer in a stalled market cannot exit to redirect their money elsewhere. They are locked in. The mortgage payment goes out. The value does not come back. The buyer watches other markets grow while theirs sits still or falls. The cost over a decade is not just the interest on the mortgage. It is every pound of growth the buyer missed because their money was locked in the wrong place at the wrong time. It is the pension they did not build, the savings they did not accumulate, the investment they did not make, and the second property they did not buy. The financial future they planned for when they signed the mortgage is not the financial future they are living. The crash took the plan and replaced it with a holding pattern. The buyer is not building wealth, they are maintaining a position, and the position is not improving. The buyer watches friends who rent and invest do better financially than they are doing as a homeowner. The buyer watches colleagues who bought in a different area build equity while theirs disappears. The buyer who is told that owning is always better than renting is finding out that owning in the wrong market at the wrong time is the most expensive decision they have ever made. The property was supposed to be the foundation. Instead, it became the anchor. And the buyer cannot cut it loose without losing everything they put into it. The crash does not just take money from the property's value, it takes the buyer's options. The option to move, to save, to invest, to retire on time, to take the job, and to build a life that is not entirely defined by one decision made in a market that changed after they committed. That is what nobody is safe from. Not the price on the screen, but the life behind it. If you are in a property right now, check what it is worth against what you owe. If you are considering buying, ask yourself one question before you sign. If the value falls and the rate rises at the same time, what happens to your budget, your savings, your options, and your plan? The monthly payment is not the only number that matters. The total cost of being in the wrong property at the wrong time is measured in years of your life, not pounds on a page. The crash is not just a headline about house prices. It is inside the buyer's deposit, their monthly budget, their career, their retirement, and every pound of opportunity that accumulates while their money is locked in a property that is not working for them. Nobody is safe because the crash does not stay on the screen. It moves into the buyer's life, and once it is there, it does not leave until the market recovers or the buyer finds a way out. Subscribe to the channel because the headline talks about prices. This channel talks about what those prices are doing to the buyer's actual life.